Semester number 2, lesson number 13. Our aim today is what steps were taken to create a peace policy following World War I. And remember when we talked yesterday or last time, Woodrow Wilson believed that this would be the war to end all wars, and that if they took care of things in World War I correctly, there would be peace on earth. It's, I guess it's a very idealistic belief, but that's what he felt. So we're going to start with the search for peace. And World War I is going to end in November of 1918. The Allied side is going to be victorious, which is, the French, the British, the Americans, and a few other countries. President Woodrow Wilson, he's going to play a huge role in the peacemaking process to try to create peace between the two sides. An armistice was signed. An armistice is like a ceasefire, an end to the fighting, by both sides on November 11th, 1918, and was enforced 5 hours later. So within 5 hours of that happening, there was no more fighting. The armistice between the Allies and Germany was an agreement that ended the fighting in the First World War and started us on a path to peace. However, as you guys learned last year, and we're going to learn in more detail from the U.S. perspective this year, really what happens with World War I is, World War I does not end the right way to prevent future wars. And the way it ends causes problems that are going to lead to World War II. So with that being said, the first thing we're going to look at, which you guys probably learned last year in Ms. BP or Mr. Luna's class, is the 14 points. All right? And the 14 points was a speech given by the United States President Woodrow Wilson to a joint session of Congress on January 8th, 1918. The speech was delivered 10 months before the armistice with Germany and became the basis for the terms of German surrender. So these 14 ideas that President Woodrow Wilson had are going to become the basis for German surrender. What needs to be done for this surrender to take place, and what are the expectations for after the war. So if we look at the 14 points, or the important aspects of the 14 points, here are 5 really important ones. All right, open, not secret diplomacy. So no doing things behind the world's back. Basically, everything is out in the open. When countries are talking, they're talking in front of everybody, and there's no surprises. Freedom of the seas. No unrestricted submarine warfare like the Germans had been doing during World War I, which was proven by the sinking of the Lusitania. The removal of all trade barriers to allow trade between all countries. An arms reduction, so basically limiting every country's military so that there would be less of a chance of violence. And a big one is the concept of self-determination, allowing national groups to make their own political decisions. All right, so these are the 5 most important ones. Self-determination, allowing a group of people to make their own decisions for their country. All right, very important. So the Treaty of Versailles is going to be signed really by the winners. I mean, everyone agrees to it, but it's the winners of World War I that decide these terms of the Treaty of Versailles. And really, when you look at what happens with Germany, they get a real raw deal. And, you got to think of it in terms of, if you punish someone too harshly, are they going to respond positively or negatively? And Germany had to agree to the following terms. They had to accept complete responsibility for causing the war. So they had to give all the war guilt. They had to take all the war guilt upon themselves. They had to pay huge reparations to the Allies, and reparations just all the money for everything that was done during the war, in terms of casualties, manpower, in terms of destruction, everything. They had to pay for all of it. They had to give up their military zones and their military forces. All right. They basically became nothing more than a small army. They had to fully get rid of their navy, and their army became very, very small. They had to cede or give up lands to the new nations of Poland and Czechoslovakia. So parts of Germany were basically taken and new lands were made out of them. And I want you to pay attention to this one. Circle it, highlight it, underline it, whatever you got to do, because you're going to see that this is going to become the focus of Hitler's reasoning behind taking these territories back before World War II. And they had to give up their overseas colonies. Among these ideas that Wilson had was to create a League of Nations. All right, and the League of Nations was created at this time, was a group of intergovernmental organization founded as a result of the Paris Peace Conference that ended the First World War. It was the first permanent international organization whose principal mission was to maintain world peace. And it sounded like a great idea. Wilson proposed it. Everyone loved it. The idea of all these countries working together to ensure world peace from here on out. Wilson only forgot one thing. And that one problem was he forgot to get the permission of the United States Congress. And when he went to Congress and said, this is a great opportunity for us to have peace on earth, Congress said, no way. All right? And the reason is that after World War I, the United States wants to go back into a policy of isolationism. They want to maintain their sovereignty. They want to separate themselves from the rest of the world. And in doing so, they don't want to be involved in any political aspects of Europe. So Congress says no to it. And because of that, the United States is not even part of the League of Nations. And because the United States is not part of the League of Nations, it is really a very ineffective, and weak group or organization. All right? And this is just kind of backing that up. The U.S. feared that they might be obligated to provide troops to defend member nations. They were afraid of this alliance system because if you look at World War I, the alliance system is what caused everything. The Senate wanted to keep the United States free from foreign entanglements. They did not approve the Treaty of Versailles. The U.S. never joined the League of Nations. They created a separate peace agreement with Germany, and the U.S. returns to a foreign policy of non-intervention or isolationism. They do not involve themselves with the rest of the world. So reparations and war debt. The United States insisted on repayment after World War I. High American tariffs or taxes limited European trade, which then reduced earnings that could be used to pay off war debts. The Dawes Plan, which was adopted in 1924, allowed the U.S. to lend money to Germany to pay its war reparations. And we're going to talk more about that in class, but really what they did is, the United States lent money to Germany so that Germany could pay back Britain and France, so that Britain and France could pay back their war debts to the United States. And then they had Germany in more of a hole. All right, so this was not meant to be a nice thing by the United States, but really a way to make more money. All right, the European nations then used that money to pay back the United States, like we had said. So our check for understanding today. President Woodrow Wilson's 14 points describes which of the following? 1. Statements of post-war goals for establishing world peace. 2. Plans of victorious nations to divide conquered territories. 3. Military strategies for defeating enemy nations. Or 4. Agreements between nations to eliminate further development of weapons. And we will talk about that more in class. Your class assignment today, which is a 50-point formative grade, is to write a well-developed half-page, three-quarters of a page paper that explains something that we've talked about the last 2 days, basically World War I. And the 4 points that you have to hit are 1. Why did the United States enter World War I? 2. How was Germany punished after the war? 3. How did the punishment of the Treaty of Versailles end up being a huge cause of World War II? And 4. Why did the United States re-enter their policy of isolationism following World War I? Explain using details and examples. And that is it for today. Have a good day.